Britain and France have agreed to work with Ukraine on halting hostilities in the country's three-year full-scale war with Russia.
Einen Deal über die Ukraine zu machen, das wird Sie nicht überraschen, wenn ich das sage. Das ist sowohl für die Ukraine inakzeptabel als auch für Europa.
Wir müssen unsere deutsche Unterstützung für die Ukraine noch einmal ausbauen. Und zwar unverzüglich.
The Eastern Bloc, Western Europe, the US, the EU, NATO, and many other countries and international organisations are making serious efforts for this. Ukraine's President Zelenskyy recently held a historic summit with US President Donald Trump. The meeting between Zelenskyy and Trump, initially aimed at finalising an agreement granting the US access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals, turned into a heated debate. Ukraine did not get a clear result from the meeting with the US in Washington. This has galvanised the EU, particularly the UK, France and Germany. Countries such as the UK, France and Germany have declared that they stand by Ukraine and will continue to support it. In fact, by the time these statements were published, Zelenskyy had already turned his route to the UK after the US. The Ukrainian leader cancelled all his activities in the US and made his way to the kingdom. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer warmly welcomed Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelenskyy and invited him to the meeting. Mr. Starmer's positive attitude towards Zelenskyy after the tough meeting in the US attracted all the attention. Keir Starmer talked about a summit of EU leaders and expressed his happiness that Zelenskyy was in the UK. This was the beginning of a summit in London that left its mark on history. Now we will take a look at what the outcome of this summit was and what the EU's position will be in the peace process of the war between Ukraine and Russia. But first, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and give us a like to stay informed about our content. All this is completely free of charge. Let's take a look at what the EU side decided at that important summit in the UK, which Zelenskyy was eagerly awaiting. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer hosted the meeting at Lancaster House, a 200-year-old mansion near Buckingham Palace. Leaders from Germany, Denmark, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Spain, Canada, Finland, Sweden, the Czech Republic and Romania attended the summit. The Turkish Foreign Minister, NATO Secretary General, the Presidents of the European Commission and the Council of Europe also attended the meeting. Keir Starmer told the leaders, who gathered on Sunday for a summit on the war in Ukraine, that they must continue to support Kyiv and meet in a once-in-a-generation moment for Europe's security. Speaking at the opening of the meeting, Mr. Starmer said that Russia continues its relentless aggression even as it talks of peace. Flanked by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and French President Emmanuel Macron, Mr. Starmer emphasised that the three agreed to work on a plan to stop the war and take it to the United States, which has discussed brokering a peace deal. Starmer said he was focused on being a bridge to restart peace talks and used his collapse as an opportunity to re-engage with Trump, Zelenskyy and Macron, rather than ramp up the rhetoric. The London meeting took on greater importance to defend and support the war-torn ally. Sunday's summit is likely to include talks on the establishment of a European military force to be sent to Ukraine to support a ceasefire. Starmer suggests this would involve a coalition of the willing. He also wants the US to re-engage, saying the UK Prime Minister does not trust Russian President Vladimir Putin, but trusts Trump. Starmer believes that there are intense discussions to get security guarantees from the US. According to Keir Starmer, if there is to be an agreement, if there is to be a cessation of hostilities, then it must be defended, because the worst outcome is a temporary pause, and then Russian President Vladimir Putin comes back. The Prime Minister of the UK said that this has happened in the past, that he thinks it is a real risk, and that is why, if there is an agreement, they have to make sure that it is a permanent agreement, not a temporary pause. Mr. Starmer listed three key elements for a successful peace deal. These include arming the Ukrainians to put them in a position of strength, including a European element to guarantee security, and providing a US backstop to prevent Putin from breaking his promises. Keir Starmer says all three pieces need to be in place, and he is working hard to put it together. The UK's recent $2.8 billion aid package to Ukraine could be used for the armaments mission in the plan. After this meeting hosted by Mr. Starmer, Zelenskyy has received broad support from European leaders, including this important aid. Large-scale financial support was also discussed after the meeting. Some €200 billion in seized Russian assets are on the agenda for Ukraine. Since the immediate goal of the meetings in London is to keep Ukraine at war so that it can negotiate from a position of maximum power, this amount seems to be enough to fulfil these goals for a certain period of time. With the summit organised by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Ukraine may have gained a number of advantages, including this huge budget. Apart from the UK, there were also EU countries that gave Zelenskyy a lot of support. One of these countries was Germany, as we mentioned. After the Ukrainian president's visit to the UK, very important statements were shared from the Berlin side. Germany presented a surprise aid package for Ukraine. Following the escalation of tensions between Kyiv and Washington, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock stated that the additional €3 billion of aid that the Berlin government will provide to Ukraine should be sent urgently. Baerbock's call for aid follows an unprecedented meeting on February 28th, when US President Donald Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and US Vice President J.D. Vance clashed in the Oval Office. Annalena Baerbock also called on Germany to immediately rebuild its support for Ukraine. As a second necessary step, the German minister called for the EU summit on March 6th to approve a comprehensive financial aid package for Kyiv, including humanitarian, economic, and military assistance. Baerbock also called on Germany, France, the United Kingdom, and Poland to agree to supply Ukraine with long-range weapons. The minister believes that these steps will help Ukraine continue to resist Russian aggression, despite the announced or potential cancellation of US aid, and will guarantee a just peace rather than surrender. These statements signalled a rekindling of Germany's impeccable support for Ukraine. In fact, Germany has been one of the leading countries, along with the United Kingdom and France, not only in terms of support, but also in terms of sending troops to Ukraine. If you remember, the German foreign minister said that his government was open to the possibility of sending troops to Ukraine in case of a peace agreement. It is expected that Germany's latest plan to send troops to Ukraine will be much more intense in the wake of this situation. European countries also support Germany's plan to send troops to Ukraine and to wage a joint war with NATO. France, in particular, was one of the leading actors in sending troops to Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron initiated the debate on sending troops to Ukraine at a meeting of Kyiv's allies in Paris in February, which was strongly opposed by some European countries. In fact, Germany was among them. Following the visit of UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to France for the commemorations of November 11th, the idea of sending troops to Ukraine has been revived. The UK and France were in discussions to cooperate on sending troops to defence Ukraine in order to create a hard core of allies in Europe, with a particular focus on Ukraine and wider European security. This was in line with statements made by French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot during his visit to London. When asked about the possibility of sending French troops to the field, Paris and London's cooperation in this way is to be congratulated, while urging Western allies not to define or express red lines in their support for Ukraine. The French Ministry of the Armed Forces and the Élysée Palace have not yet given the green light to the deployment of conventional troops or private contractors. But for several months, such proposals have clearly been on the table. One of them concerns Défense Conseil International, the Ministry of the Armed Forces' main operator for monitoring French arms export contracts and transferring relevant military know-how. Défense Conseil International is 55% owned by the French state. Défense Conseil, 80% of which is made up of former military personnel, will be ready to continue training Ukrainian soldiers in Ukraine, as it is already doing in France and Poland. If necessary, this council could also protect French military equipment sent to Kyiv. To this end, Babcock International, already present in Ukraine, has approached the Défense Conseil to share Ukraine's local facilities. These proposals from the West, however, have been a great source of inspiration for Turkey, which has said that it will align itself with the United States and make every effort to end the war between Ukraine and Russia. The government in Ankara made the move that Russian President Vladimir Putin had least expected, and followed up on the idea last mentioned by the UK and France to end the war. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced that he would mobilise a peacekeeping mission after recent meetings with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Erdogan shocked the world by announcing that he might send peacekeepers to Ukraine. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan reiterated Ankara's commitment to Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty, which he said were non-negotiable. Speaking at a press conference in Ankara after his meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy, in Erdogan's words, Crimea should be fully Ukraine's, and the necessary steps should be taken to achieve this. And the way to achieve this is through the Black Sea. Therefore, if Turkish leader Erdogan wants to prepare the ground for the return of Crimea to the Ukrainians, he needs to strengthen Kyiv's navy. In its annual report for 2024, Baerbock announced that work was underway to create a technical support site in Ukraine, including the repair and overhaul of military vehicles. American contractors could now operate openly in Ukraine and maintain military equipment sent to Kyiv from American or Allied stocks, such as F-16s and Patriot air defence systems. Now France, with the support of the UK, is considering protecting and maintaining French weapons in Ukraine for the same purpose. Within the French armed forces, especially the army, there is less and less reticence about the role that the country's military personnel can play in Ukraine, especially after the end of hostilities. The Chief of Staff of the Army, General Pierre Schill, has confirmed the possibility of these security guarantees offered by a NATO coalition or by special purpose coalitions, and therefore of some kind of French contribution. In the same way, the UK wing is working very hard with its army. The UK, together with its military wing, has admitted to helping the Ukrainians to develop their own weapons. In response to a question from an MP, Starmer emphasised that they had made their own contribution without elaborating. According to analysts, the UK's assistance was specifically related to the development of long-range drones, which have been striking Russia for several months, creating serious difficulties for Moscow. This assistance is a sensitive area for the Allies, who have been pushing the limits of joint warfare since the start of the war. The UK has had a large number of military advisors in Ukraine since 2014, a fact that has not gone unnoticed by the Russians. Russia's ambassador to the UK, Andrei Kelin, has suggested that the UK is now directly involved in this war. Andrei Kelin was probably referring to the use of Storm Shadow missiles in attacks on Russia. With such accusations, the question of the aftermath is becoming more and more acute in a context where Europeans are being forced to become more and more involved in the conflict. According to Elie Tenenbaum, a researcher at the French Institute of International Relations, it may not be easy for the Europeans to send contractors to Ukraine, as the Americans did, if only for insurance and financial reasons, but they can envisage other models. According to him, in the event of a ceasefire agreement, it would be technically possible to send conventional troops to Ukraine to guarantee the country's security and Russia's compliance with the ceasefire. These troops would be deployed in eastern Ukraine, backed by an as-yet undefined air and naval protection system, and not by NATO's Article 5, which obliges the alliance countries to retaliate in the event of an attack. Elie Tenenbaum's plan enjoys great support in France. The German side confirms all such support for Ukraine and claims to be on board. At the same time as the Berlin government is supporting the EU's efforts, it is also doing critical work to develop its own national military industry. According to the Germans, more deterrent military dynamics are needed to stop the Russians. To this end, Germany is forging solid partnerships with leading global defence suppliers, particularly evident in artillery development, where efforts are particularly intense. Recently exhibited at Eurosatory, Rheinmetall presented GMARS, an MLRS developed in collaboration with Lockheed Martin, which outperforms the American HIMARS. Indeed, German industrial capacity in terms of defence is the envy of the world. In addition to artillery systems, this process also includes armoured vehicles. Germany is arguably at the forefront of armoured vehicle production. German armoured vehicles excel in protection, mobility and efficiency. German armoured vehicles are also heavily armoured and provide exceptional protection, while their tracked systems have proven time and again to be of critical importance, demonstrating superior tactical mobility. Their advanced automation technology further increases their efficiency, providing unmatched performance. Despite criticism about their weight and cost, these features are essential trade-offs for the superior protection they offer. German industries report that none of the 16 PH-2000 systems supplied to Ukraine have been lost, making it one of the most powerful artillery systems. However, it is important to recognise that these sophisticated systems are designed for advanced military forces. Given the maintenance demands and the expertise required for operation, quality inevitably comes at a price. Indeed, the proven successes of German armoured vehicles in Ukraine have led some commentators in other countries to strongly recommend the production of German tanks for national defence needs. For example, the UK mainland has too many main battle tanks and insufficient production infrastructure. Many commentators therefore see the Leopard 2 produced by KNDS as the perfect solution. While the second round of talks between the United States and Russia was eagerly awaited, on the other front, the European Union was making preparations for a possible peace situation. The EU wing convened the leaders of the member states and adopted the 16th sanctions package against Russia. The aim was to end the war as soon as possible by restricting Russia economically. In addition to sanctions against Russia, the United Kingdom and France reconsidered the idea of sending troops to Ukraine. These proposals from the West, however, have been a great source of inspiration for Turkey, which has said that it will align itself with the United States and make every effort to end the war between Ukraine and Russia. The government in Ankara made the move that Russian President Vladimir Putin had least expected, and followed up on the idea last mentioned by the UK and France to end the war. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced that he would mobilize a peacekeeping mission after recent meetings with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Erdogan shocked the world by announcing that he might send peacekeepers to Ukraine.
Hızlığına olan kuvvetli desteğini ifade ettim. Aynı zamanda müzakere sürecinin kalıcı bir barışla sonuçlandırılması için her türlü desteği vereceğimizin altını çizdim. Avrupa Birliği'nin ve birliğe yön veren ülkelerin yanlışta ısrar etmekten vazgeçmesi gerekiyor.
Turkey may join a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine as part of Trump's ceasefire efforts with Putin. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan raised this possibility in separate meetings in Ankara with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Most recently, after talks between the US and Russian delegations in Istanbul, Erdogan shocked even the EU with his decision. Erdogan's dramatic decision to deploy troops put Turkey in a critical position, potentially easing the burden on European allies such as the United Kingdom and France, who were planning a European-led mission to Ukraine. Already, President Erdogan has maintained strong ties with both Ukraine and Russia and played a key role in negotiating the now defunct Black Sea Grain Agreement. Now, with the troop deployment plan, we can see Turkey as a much deeper actor on the ground. Of course, Turkey has conditions. The Ankara government has announced that it will not implement the troop deployment plan unless it is part of such an agreement. But if the conditions are met, there will be no obstacle to this. The Ukrainian and US sides seem quite happy with this decision. In fact, Ukrainian officials are already sharing information about Turkey's ability to carry out important activities in this regard. A Ukrainian official close to the talks confirmed Turkey's support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, suggesting that Ankara could provide credible and enforceable peace and security guarantees. But when the EU stands together, under the same roof, the shortcomings gradually disappear and the result is a formidable force. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer proved this with his recent summit. Now the EU has a peace plan to present to the US. We will see what the Trump administration will think about this in the time to come. Thank you for watching.